Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Off the Record. Last week we spoke in depth about vinyl reissues and a bunch of other good stuff, and we're excited to keep the conversation going this week with some new topics. You can find us at offtherecord.fm for any news about the show and show notes as well to keep updated with the podcast episodes. So last week or 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine who runs a blog for Holics, a music streaming site, published an article about basically college and the music industry. So that rings very true to my heart because I am in the music industry and I go to college. And so there's a lot of different points of views basically about is college worth it? What should you go to college for? What should you be doing while you're in college if you want to be in the music industry? So heads up, I do go to college for a music industry program, which a lot of people think is a joke. Do you think that's a joke, Jesse?
Well, as a graduate of it with a music business and a recording engineer degree, I think it's a joke. Yes, I've been out of college now for 17 years. I think this is the right number. And
really just showing the age.
Yeah. Well, you can't see gray hairs on podcasts. But it's never done a single thing for me in 17 years of working in this business. And I've worked, I've not just been a record producer. I've been a manager. I've worked at a record label. I've been a concert promoter for years. I've worked at the top freeform radio station. I worked at the top mastering house. And the funny thing when I worked at the top mastering house is Alan Douches, who I worked for at West Side, said he actually didn't want to hire me because he doesn't like to hire people from recording school because it gives you an entitlement. And I think, now that I'm somebody who hires people, I think he's right that a lot of people who go to these schools feel entitled because they pissed away thousands of dollars and they went for a time and they feel like they're owed something when really you walk out of there with very useless knowledge for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to look at it. So in my case, I go to Drexel University. Drexel is one of the top 5 most expensive schools in the country. That hurts. So, in our music industry program, how it works is we're split into basically 2 groups. There's a music business track and there's an audio engineering track. My grade, for example, is about 50 kids, let's say. And, you go to school for 4 years and it's an insane amount of money. Just think of what any college tuition would be, but more expensive. And then, just I think kind of like any other possible job field in America right now, and that's a whole other conversation we shouldn't get into, but you end up leaving college and it's like, well, I just trained to go in the music industry, but the music industry, more than potentially any other field, doesn't really hire based off of degree, which is kind of the most interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
About it, like,
well, but also rightfully so.
Oh, I totally agree, and that's why it's really interesting, I guess, that there are all these programs for music industry when even if you were to ask some of the professors at my school, they're going to tell you, I am not your teacher because I went to school. I am your teacher because I was very experienced and was successful in whatever kind of business I was in the music industry, and now they hired me to tell you about that, basically.
Yes.
It's a very funny thing, I think.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
I think, as somebody who now, I've been hiring people now, I think I hired my first employee a decade ago. And it is that thing of like, you get out of recording school and you have nothing. And, a lot of kids write me for advice about what they should do about this, like whether they should go to school or not. And obviously it's weird for me to say because I went to school for it and I get to say, no, you shouldn't go to school for it. But it's never done me any good. And secondly, I learned more in the first 3 months I worked at a recording studio than I did in, 2 years of school. And, we're in an age, like, I'm really into, a lot of these books that talk about, like, how you don't have to ask permission for anything these days. Like, I think, like, the guy from Reddit wrote one, and then Derek Sivers wrote one. But, like, you can just start doing any of this stuff anytime you want. You don't need to go to school. And, not to be gratuitous, but like I wrote a book that's curriculum for 2 colleges now, compulsory reading. And it's like, that thing of like, I don't want to be like that self-promotion guy, but you read my book and about 2 other ones, you're kind of good to go if you want to do a lot of things in the music business. And just start doing them, start interning.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I do think there are other points that I disagree on, but to that point, like whenever I am asked about to do like an email interview for someone's like class project or something about that, there's always a question that's how would you recommend me to like how could I be on the best track to do something potentially successful for myself, right?
Yeah.
And my answer to that is always just like you were saying about some of those books, is just like you just literally have to do it. And
Yeah.
there's not necessary there's no way for anyone to tell you how to be successful in that kind of realm, and that's kind of there are tons of books that will tell you how to be successful for probably anything in life, but like rarely any of those things are accurate, because especially in the music industry, that's just not how it works. There's no guarantee to success. You just have to do what you want to do and do it well and do it smarter than someone else is doing. And that's not something
Yes.
that like I can say that to someone, but that like they'll either grasp that or they won't. But if they grasp it, there's also no like guarantee that that's going to help them, right? Because you still have to be smarter or better or more focused or
Or find
something
more
like
talented
that.
people to work with.
Right. So
know-
where I do think I disagree with you though is that, well, so I'm like I said, I'm obviously in college right now. I don't think I've truly necessarily learned anything in the programs I'm in, let's say, but college is an interesting time. So for me, where my experience about college is best off is that it's like a purgatory to me. I have a 4 year waiting period, right? And so what I've done to take advantage of that, within like the first few months of freshman year, I was like, look, I got to get out of here. And then my Jewish mother said, you can't get out of here. And I said, please let me get out of here. And once again, she was like, no, I'm your Jewish mother. You can't get out of here. So starting then, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? Because I'm miserable.
Yeah.
And I had the website, and that was in its infancy still, but going very well. And I loved that. And of course, I wanted to still do that. But where I started taking advantage of being in school was not what can I learn or how can I get the most out of this teacher. It was kind of like, what can I do in these 4 years where I can enable myself by the time I graduate to set myself up to being in a position where I am happy with my own success or direction. And that definition is different for anyone. But for me, it's, am I doing what I want to be doing? Also, am I making, the bare minimum amount or more of hopefully money to sustain what I like doing? And that I think is like the most important thing when it comes down to sort of college and the music industry, because you don't want to be in that perpetual state of interning. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, where you are sort of, you graduate from college and then you need to intern for another 2 or 3 years and then probably still not get like a really great job in the music industry. You know what I mean? So for me, I don't know. For me, it's been great. I don't like going to school. I hate it. I wish I could just have 4 years where I didn't need a real job, but college is fake. It's a fake world. So you might as well take it to your advantage, in my mind, at least, in terms of what can I do in this 4 year period of time where I can set myself up for something else.
So I think these are all great points. So there's 2 thoughts I have of this. So one of the more interesting things. So for my background, I was producing records already for like a lot of like the New York Mohawk punk bands of the day, since we were more real punks than, you kids are now. And
yeah, I'm fake punk.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest here. And but the year that I did the majority of my courses in college was the year I produced the least amount of records in my life. Because I was too burnt out. I was also working at a club promoting shows and doing sound at night and working at a radio station. So I had a lot going on that year too. But I lost my passion for it because it became like my shitty job. And like
Right.
I think I produced 3 records that year, and I had produced 35 when I was 18 and in high school, the year before. But the other thing I will say is I am not anti-college. What I am is anti-music business college. I think I told Mike, my co-owner and co-producer at our studio, like he was in college when he started working for me. I said, get out of your music business program, get out of your audio engineer program, and go start doing a business degree. You get a business degree.
Okay, yeah. So that's the interesting angle. Go on, but like, I totally agree with you.
You get a business degree if you have a business degree from a good school, like let's say Drexel, and you go to a bank and say, I want to open a business where I throw pies in people's faces. They're like, cool, business degree from Drexel. Here's $100,000. Like, you can get a loan for anything when you have a business degree. And in all reality, if most jobs in the music business, the best skill you can have, like it's the same thing for when I hire interns too. Know how to use a spreadsheet. Know how to do some basic accounting things. You're worth more than any music business program. Take some music business electives, but get a business degree instead, not a music business degree. I'm done.
I fully agree. No, I fully agree. It's interesting too. So I applied. So for Drexel's a weird school in that you have to apply to basically the program you want to be in, which is great for an 18-year-old in high school saying that he needs to know what he wants to do the day he steps into school for the rest of his life. But I agree in the sense that the way the music industry philosophical. Works itself,
didn't you know what you wanted to do at an early age?
Yeah, but I'm weird. Like I'm the
maybe we're both weird. Right? Well, I mean, I think of it this way. I've been doing. I started producing records at 15, and I'm 36 now, so I've been doing it for 21 years. But I know a lot of people who knew what they wanted to do at 15, 16 years old. I don't think that's weird. Most of the people I know knew what they wanted to do.
That's interesting. I don't think I know anyone. I think it's even less like. I don't know if it's an age thing or not, but I think it's even less going forward now. It's like very few people I know like know what they want to do.
Everything I've done in my life, I knew I wanted to do at around 15 years old. Like whether it was writing a book or being a record producer, I knew I wanted to do all this stuff already. So that's, I mean, okay. So anyway, I was more curious.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just think it's interesting that. Not interesting. I just think that the proper thing to do if we're talking about like the music industry is that you're not like. I don't know. When it comes down to like a business kind of program for the music industry, and that's what I'm in, I'm not learning how to, I don't know, account. I'm learning dumb things that are not really real in practice in the music industry, which is kind of the best part about it in terms of sense and
give an example of what that is. I'm curious.
A good example of where this is wrong is like I have a class now, and it's a booking class, and we are emailing promoters to get holds for bands and stuff. And I don't think that's bad. Like, I think that's great. I don't like if you're gonna actually want to become a booking agent, you should probably be doing this already in your own by the junior year of college. But in theory, like that's a truly hands-on thing, right? And so that's like I give that like a check mark, right? But then I have classes where, all right, so I have a recording business class, and so that basically explains to you just what all these deals are, but they're kind of just outdated in the sense, right? So if you're gonna step into if you have a band now and you're gonna step into a major label's office, right? And that's like what the perspective it's from, but so much of it is just kind of like. That's not really how it works. And so it worked, I think, when a lot of these teachers 20 years ago were maybe doing a deal with a band, right? But like it's not 20 years ago anymore. And I think probably with many college curriculums in any nature, it takes a while for the curriculum to catch up to the present day. But obviously with the music industry, like shit is just changing. And that's good or bad depending on how you look at it, but it doesn't necessarily fit in with college too well. So a lot of these classes are either just kind of like basic information, which I guess is helpful, but it's not, also not something you're necessarily retaining. There are classes on publishing and stuff like that, and that's great. That was actually the only thing I really have learned that I've used in practice is a publishing class, and I took that into advantage when we had to figure out publishing for the acceptance record for bad timing, and that was great. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
took 2.5 years, but something paid off, right?
Yeah,
But otherwise, it's just a lot of it's filler.
I learned how to fix equipment and solder really well in college, and that was about the only thing I learned that was useful. And everything else that was there, I already knew because I'd already been doing it for 3 years.
To me, the business track is kind of dumb, but at Drexel, at least the recording track, I think is great. I don't know what they're necessarily taught, but what's great about it in my mind is that the students who are in that recording half of the major, like they get studio access for free. And, Drexel, because they are a very expensive college, has multi-million-dollar studios. So, for example,
Sure.
like modern baseball, go to Drexel and they've recorded both of their last two albums for like free, So I don't know if I were, that sounds great to me, but
That's
business
great,
stuff is a
but
lot different.
the amount of hours you get doing that don't seem to pay off compared to how many hours you could spend just learning that recording software if you just did it on your own. And
Yeah.
sure, being in a multi-million-dollar studio is cool and it's fun to be around an SSL and all that fun stuff, but like, the real reality of it is like, when I'm hiring somebody, I want to hire somebody who's proficient in Pro Tools, and then when I explain drum editing, they get it in 5 minutes, not in 5 hours. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things too is that, so like when I went to college, Pro Tools didn't exist yet. And by the time I got my first job in a recording studio, it was like that funny thing of like I walked in and I was, I knew how to edit tape and all this fun stuff, and we were still doing records on tape at that time. But like there was a Pro Tools system, and I was kind of useless because I didn't know how to use it quite yet, even though I had Cubase at home. But I sat and learned Cubase for a while, and then all of a sudden I became really valuable, and then I got a job because I knew it better than the other interns I was competing against, because I was doing the work at home, and that was more valuable work.
Yeah, that's
so
yeah,
I
and
don't.
also your side of things are way more hands-on in a literal sense
And
as well.
so I like, I say it all the time. Like I answer the question on Reddit. I answer it whenever I get email because, on another side note, anybody who's listening to this who's past this point, I think it should be a law that if a kid asks you for advice, you have to answer within a few days. But I say it like I think recording school is the most horrible, not valuable thing that you can do with your time. I think it's just a total waste of time and money. And the thing we're also not discussing about this, and I guess you're not to the stage of yet, is that having a student loan and then having to get an internship or not being paid much or trying to afford New York rent with a student loan on top of it is not a fun time in life. And I've watched a lot of people who go, well, maybe I can't do the music business and I have to do something else because I just got this music business degree, but I can't afford to pay off how much it cost me. And that's a real thing, especially,
Yeah, that's a great point. Like the tuitions are madly expensive, right? Like, so if you were to go to Drexel today, like you were a freshman enrolling for the 2014, 2015 year, you have to live on campus, you have to have a meal plan. And let's say you had no financial aid, your tuition could be upwards of 70 grand a year, which is like, multiply that by 4. And then think about how long that could take to pay off after you graduate with interest and with everything and with a shitty paying job in the music industry. Yeah, like it could cost upwards of 60 to 70 grand a year to be in college. In a field that notoriously is not very high paying and is more about passion and hopefully money long term and stuff like that. But if you multiply 60 times 4 and then think of how long it's going to take to pay that off with interest, and then of course just practical things like you need to pay rent, you need to eat, etc. It's kind of like it is the largest growing like black hole in the world, right? Like that you don't get to see that money you make because it's crazy high debts or loans potentially. So that's a really good point and a really scary thing too, especially if your degree isn't necessarily practical, like a music business or production degree.
Yeah, or like, women's studies or something, or philosophy these days where, you see this insane amount of unemployment of people who paid $200,000 in college fees. The other interesting thing I think too is like, I don't know a lot of people who work in what they got their degree in. Like my father was an American history degree and he worked in, advertising. Like, getting a degree, sometimes it's also just the thing of that's your pass for something, and you get a degree from Drexel, you can do a lot of things, but yet again, get it in something practical and learn some really practical skills. And like, you go to school for restaurant management, you're probably going to learn a lot of the skills that are there for band management as well, which is why you see so many people when they leave the music business and they get sick of it, they go into restaurant management. It's the same skill set.
That's a good observation.
I see
true,
it all the time since, obviously I have a lot of aging musician friends who've been getting out of the business as they get old and their bands can't make money anymore, and that's what they all go into.
Probably a good time for our first sponsor break. We would like to thank Limited Run for sponsoring, again, this week's episode of Off the Record. Limited Run is an easy-to-set-up, direct-to-fan solution for labels and artists. If you want to sign up, go ahead and you'll be selling whatever you want to sell within just minutes through both PayPal and credit. Limited Run specializes in great features like cart limiting, digital street date solutions, and digital and physical bundles, and a bunch more. Digital street date allows you to sell digital with vinyl as a pre-order, and the digital release will be automatically delivered by email to your fans on the street date of an album, and you can upload a lossless file and let your fans choose whatever format they'd like to listen. Limited Run's a great platform. Check it out at limitedrun.com, and thank you for sponsoring Off the Record this week. Great. So a good follow-up conversation, I thought, to sort of college is interning, because interning is sort of goes hand in hand with music business and also just general world jobs. But an interesting article popped up last week just talking about why the music industry sort of doesn't necessarily respect or help nurture the future and the ones that make it possible. Jesse, do you have interns at the studio?
So the interesting thing about the timing of this is my last intern starts next week, and I'm not taking interns anymore. I have.
Why that decision?
I don't get enough value out of when I train somebody. By the time they're useful to me, they're done and they want to go back to their own studio and just do their own thing. And so it's not useful to me anymore to have an intern because they learn drum editing, they learn how to tune a vocal, they learn maybe some MIDI editing, and then they're like, cool, I'm just gonna go sit and record my own band now, see you later, and it's not worth it to me. So the intern I have this time, like I made the exception, is like, he seemed like a great kid and he's also interested in both like the type of stuff I write about and recording. But I don't know that I want one anymore. And while I think it's very important to bring people in and mentor them, and I had some great mentors, I live a very weird life in that of a producer that a lot of what I do is mixing and mastering. And so, I like to wake up when I want to wake up, and I don't want to have to tell an intern like, hey, see you at 11 o'clock when, I might have had a good date and stayed up all night the night before, and I don't want to go to work till 2 p.m. And I'm just kind of tired of it. And so I'm a little over that. But
so how long have you had interns for, like, before this? Has it been off and on, or has it been pretty steady for X amount of years?
I've had steady interns. There was 1 year, I'm not kidding you, when I had 100 interns in a year. It's been 11 years that I've been doing this. So
that's an interesting decision, obviously, to break it.
Yeah, it's just, it's been so many years that it hasn't been valuable to me that I had, like, it just, and like, I had some great ones this year and some great kids, but like, it's just, everybody now can go home and record, and it's just not useful to me. If I was still managing bands, that would be different. Like, kids I had helping me when I was managing Man Overboard and Transit were amazing, and they got like tons of work done. I didn't want to do like anybody who manages a band knows you don't want to have to enter your ASCAP, BMI, CSAC publishing info. That's the boringest thing on earth. Is up.
It's really, honestly, it's really a terrible, terrible.
Yeah,
thing.
it's the worst.
Oh yeah, that was the most maddening thing I've actually had to do while managing bands within the last 14 months or whatever. Wow, that was bad. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, this is why you need an intern to never do it again, and let them do that. And let them do that. Let them write form letters to blogs if you're doing your own press. Like I'd have the interns basically just do everything I didn't want to do it. But as a recording engineer, it's just not worth it. If I doing research for the next book I'm doing, there's tons of things I could utilize, and that's why I'm excited to have this intern that starts next week. But if it weren't for that, I would definitely not have an intern.
So after that, do you supplement it by just like what about the duties of the intern? Like, how do you supplement that in terms of not having interns anymore?
There's no duty.
Or does it really maybe not make that much of a difference?
I just don't miss them. We have a really tight system. So my studio is also a little different in that I have a co-producer I do every record with. I'm not like that sole record producer. Mike Ottinger was my intern. The year I had 100 interns, what I would just do is I would tell people to come to the studio. I wouldn't do an interview. I'd say just come hang out for a day and see how it goes. And literally in a year. So if you think about this, every other day pretty much I had an intern come by in this year, and I just would see who feels good in the room, who behaves themselves properly, who was useful and who was enthusiastic, and who kept calling back. And Mike kept calling back, and now he's co-owner of the studio. So there is a way to do this and have a job, and there is that possibility, but you have to be good. And if you think of it this way, the other 99 were pretty much awful.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to get. I mean, it's always hard to get a good person, regardless of paid or not paid or anything.
Alan Douchus, who I started off as an intern with at West Side Music, always had a great saying. He's like, the reason you hate all your interns is because look what they did. Like, most people will just go and do it themselves. If they really want to do it, they're not going to look for a job somewhere. They're just going to start doing it and make it happen, kind of like what you're doing while you're still in college. And the other thing is, if they're really good, they're going to take all your clients. And there's kind of some truth to that, because truth be told, like a lot of the people I assisted for and I interned for, their clients now come to me.
Yeah, didn't think about. Yeah, it's a different business compared to what you're doing with what I'm doing, in terms of clientele like that. So for the website, so for anyone that doesn't know, Property Zach is primarily me in the sense that if you see a news post, I made that news post. However, we also have a bunch of like self-made content. So that could range from interviews to reviews to discussions and a bunch of other stuff.
Essays on music business
writer,
things.
So essays on music business. Jesse's an intern of ours.
36.
Yeah. So I post all the news, but we have a bunch of content, some of which I partake in, but I would say most of which I actually don't. And so where does that come from? We have a team, but they're all volunteer based. So Properties Act does make some income for me, but it's not a lot. It's not a livable wage. So it's not really feasible to sort of pay out X amount of volunteers to, work for the website. Places like Alternative Press, they are they have a large office and they have a monthly magazine for 26 or 27 years, and they have more online revenue and stuff like that. So they don't, I'm sure they have interns, but for example, they have a large staff, of course, and they are all paid. But so the level that Properties Act is at and the reach that we have, it's not really financially feasible. So our team of writers or photographers or video people, etc., they're all volunteer based, and that's been like an interesting thing. Everyone that volunteers for the website, I'm sure, would obviously love to be paid. However, it's all volunteer based because they either, I think, like most people look at it in the sense of, we just love doing this. We have a job, so there's a portion that are maybe a little older out of college that have a real job, but they just love writing, so they want to write. there's the portion that are in college. They want to see if they like this and maybe it looks good on their resume, right? And that's cool. And then there's the portion that just like being a part of something like this. And, it's of course understood that you are a volunteer. Um, but, we have gotten backlash from that over the years from certain people. Like, I've had conversations with people at All Press and other established companies that are publishing work that people get paid for, and I would love to pay everyone, like I said, but that's an interesting thing, and those are considered, in a sense. I mean, I don't consider them interns, and I don't think anyone who's a volunteer is considered an intern. But at the same time, they're doing volunteer work potentially for a better option at a job. So Jesse, I know you said that you're going to obviously stop with recording, but you do think interning is very much. I mean, you think it's good for the employer, but do you also think it's very worthwhile for the intern?
Yes, and absolutely. Like, so think of it this way. I wrote for Maximum Rock and Roll, Punk Planet, and Tape Up, which, kind of were, the print form of a property of Zach, in some way, like back in the day. And like, I grew up in zine culture, and those zines got me the clout to get other jobs, and it really did help. And I guess the thing I should also say is, yes, interning is great for you, and you should do it, and you should start meeting people and doing real things. If you're in college or not, if you're in high school, I interned all through high school. I think I started interning at 15 at a studio that had that did like the Big Fuji's record and everything, and you want to start being around and making contacts and seeing the real world thing that's not the fake thing you read in magazines. But the other thing too is, like what you mentioned, is it worth it for employers? One of the biggest things I see is people don't know how to utilize interns. Like, they just give them terrible, stupid jobs, and they're afraid of showing them real things because they're afraid of their own job becoming obsolete and afraid of the secrets. And I think that you should never be afraid of that, and you should give interns real work to do. I've never made an intern make me coffee. I can make my own coffee. I have them do real things, not take out the garbage.
You probably know how you like your coffee made better than they do.
Yes, exactly. And I think that there's been bad information given out over the years to people of like how you're supposed to treat an intern, that they just do these terrible jobs, when really, no. If you get a good intern and you interview and you find the right person, they're capable of doing tons of things that are very, very useful to you, and not just the jobs you hate to do.
Right. And so I interned once. I've only had one internship. At this point in my life, I've decided, well, I don't really necessarily have time for an internship, but also I would be a terrible employee at this point in my life, I think.
Yes.
I'm unhireable, I think. So I had that internship. I interned for a company called Crush. I think we talked about that maybe on an earlier episode, but they are, they're a very large management company, and they manage bands like Fall Out Boy and Train, for example. And so my summer there was kind of in limbo. I didn't really enjoy it. Everyone there was great, but I didn't really enjoy it just because I didn't really like doing what I was being instructed to do. And however, I learned a lot about just the conversations that people there, much more experienced and much more smart, much smarter than me, were having. So I part of this article that we're going to link to in the show notes that you can find at offtherecord.fm are sort of like, it's good to have a bad internship potentially, not bad in the sense that they only asked me to make coffee, but it's good to sort of find out what you don't want to do. And that's a value in itself to me. And especially like we were obviously talking about in the first segment of the show with college, it kind of blows my mind that, there are 50 other students in my program next to me, and definitely over half of them either are not interning during the school year or have, or don't have like a other job that's related to the music industry as well, and like I was saying before, college has been beneficial to me because I use it as like this purgatory 4-year period where I can get a lot of work done for after college. Like, you should take advantage of your time, and not like, if you have 4 years in college, to me, like, if you're in a city or like a place that has physical interning places, or you can find things online, like you should be doing that, right? Like it's
Yes.
crazy to me that there's so many people that I go to school with every day that it's just like, after school they are not working on whatever internship because they don't
Yeah,
have one. It's like, dude, you're like, for me, it's like you're in Philadelphia, like you can find
they're playing
something,
video
you
games
know?
and social networking instead of doing it. But that's part of the passion thing, is that you have to want this enough that you know, you want this enough that you get done with school and you just keep working. And that's the thing, is if you're not passionate about it, you don't do that. And the funny thing is passion is what
Yeah,
people want to hire.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing I wanted to hit on in terms of volunteers for websites like Property Zach or, Absolute Punk is, it's kind of, whenever I get into debates or, more heated conversations about like, well, it's not ethical or whatever word you want to throw in there to having unpaid volunteers, is that, there are potential upsides. Like our friend Thomas Nassif is a great example, right? Like he was a volunteer and still is for Absolute Punk for 4 or 5 years, and then he got a great job in New York at Fuse, and that happened because he put in a ton of work and he got his name out there and he met all sorts of people. And there is, for everyone that says anything bad about interning, there's a really good counterpoint. There's always going to also be someone that didn't get burned, that really worked and was passionate and got what they want. It's a little hard for me just because I don't have copious amounts of experience interning, but at the same time, like I see people around me that intern for places and they either love it or they hate it, but most of that time they still find a lot of substantive value in it. And I think potentially like interning for a larger corporation of a music industry thing, so maybe like a very popular something like Live Nation, may not be as interesting as interning for something on a smaller level where that company may need you more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Live Nation, they do everything. For example, I would imagine they do everything in a very corporate way because that's how their company has to be structured. But instead, like interning for R5 is a smaller,
Yeah, 20-year-old concert
it's a
promotion
local version
company.
of, right. And Philadelphia, it's very grassroots, very like, I don't want to say, it's more of a, it's not like a corporate stooge kind of thing. And so they need more help, right? They have specific purposes, but for something where it's larger, like Live Nation, there's potentially less of an identity for what you need.
Um,
I think that's sort of also the difference.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna impart any advice on interning, is you want to find. I agree, a smaller outfit's gonna teach you more, and I think there is something even too that you were kind of hitting on this, of that, like the idea of that, like try with your internship, maybe not exactly what you want to do, but something you think you may want to do, and then dip your toe in that water and see if it works. Like I did a lot of different internships over time, and I learned what I did and didn't like, and then I got jobs and things like, so for example, I used to work for a record label called Go Kart Records, which was like a very big punk label that sold hundreds of thousands of records in the 90s. And after about 6 months, I went, you know what? This is not what I want to do. I want to be a record producer, and I should not be, taking up this interest in it. And I think it's very important to get those things out of the way. And but as far as the paid thing goes, so you're talking about you were referring to this article that was linked. I guess it's a Absolute Punk contributor wrote it about how also we should be, paying interns. And I'm a socialist. I love the idea of paying people for what we think they deserve in the arts and all that stuff. But there's just no money in a lot of these things, and there's never going to be, and you can't make money out of air. And while I'd love to see
That's true.
I'd love to see crowdfunding to pay interns, it's not going to happen. Like, we've been down this rabbit hole. People don't want to pay for their web content. They just don't. And, while there's exceptions to that rule, that is the rule, not the exception. And I'm sorry, like, it's not happening. Like, there's just not money for interns. Like, we're in a business right now where the money is very, very thin compared to what it used to be. Like, and record budgets are literally 1/5 of what they were 10 years ago. And it's just not going to happen. And the pay for the internship is experience, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and to me, and it's unfortunate, right? Like, of course, like I would love for everyone to get paid while they're interning, right? Or theoretically, whatever, sure, but it's not necessarily realistic with the field that you're getting into in the music industry. It's just not, like you said, like the recording budget's a great example. Like there's just less money being spent. So how can we get you money? Well, the answer is that we really can't. But this experience, if you learn if you're working with a producer that does want interns, right? That may get you that client later, like you were saying before, right? So yeah, I definitely agree when it comes down to the paying thing, which is unfortunate, but it's just kind of like one of those realities that there's kind of no way that's ever going to change unless someone figures out a way to have the music industry get billions of more dollars per year suddenly, which is not going to happen.
Well,
Probably.
that's actually that maybe next podcast we get into that, because I think that we are about to see more money come into the music business in the coming years, but that is a different subject that we could go very long on some other time.
Yeah. All right. Well, for our second sponsor break, thank you once again to Card Included for sponsoring Off the Record this week. Card Included is the only self-serve download card service around. For just a few dollars, bands and labels can secure large amounts of download cards with no sign-up necessary. So you upload your music and logos to be ready to print for a PDF for you to include cutout cards into record downloads or merch purchases, so on, or on tour at the merch booth, etc. Card Included can also collect information on downloaders, so you just want to know, hey, 500 people bought this CD in Chicago, but only 100 people bought it in Michigan. Maybe we should route our tour accordingly. So go to cardincluded.com for more, and thank you once again for sponsoring Off the Record. So third topic is topic, more of a rant potentially, close and dear to my heart. I've wanted to write an article. I want to write an article for a solid month now, maybe even longer, about Blink-182. This is a really non-college educated conversation, as we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes. But Blink-182 is a band that I like.
Your favorite band?
I think they're really interesting. They're my favorite band. But I also think, aside from that, with heavy bias, they're also a really interesting band when it comes to they're one of the only 5 or so bands in our overarching world that have the popularity they have because they're from a different era. And so what the article I've been trying to write for 1 to 2 months has been called, it's time for Blink-182 to go on hiatus again. And but I just haven't been able to write it, so I thought it might be beneficial to sort of talk out what I've wanted to write instead. And my opinions weren't necessarily mostly on, I love Tom DeLonge, or Tom DeLonge doesn't look like he wants to be there, they should break up, but more about like the perspective of Blink-182 when it comes down to where they currently are as like individuals or as a band in an environment and a business where they've done very well, obviously, for themselves for 20 years now, but do those sort of, I don't even want to say money grabs, that like that's what they're doing. The situations they're in still warrant them to sort of have to be doing this when it's kind of clear they don't necessarily want to be doing this as an overarching team. So all 3 of them, let's say. So we've seen so many bands reunite this year, right? Like last year was sort of the year of breakups. This year's sort of the year of reunions. But in 2009, when Blink reunited, that was kind of not happening. Either these bands that are breaking up or getting back together today, like there weren't really reunions back then so much. There was like a Get Up Kids reunion, and then a year later there was a Promise Ring reunion. But of course, none of those were on the size of Blink's reunion, because this is a band that has sold 25 million records. So Jesse, when you see a band reunite in general, or you've seen bunches of bands reunite over bunches of different, even decades, right, or different segments of what's happening right now.
Yeah, maybe not decades, but like, yeah, but like the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, or like the resurgences of different periods of time. So whether it's genre or money or festivals, right? Like at this point we're sort of seeing all different motivators come out, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, all different motivators. I think there's two. One, so the first big reunion of my generation was when Lifetime got back together. So, Pete Wentz showed all this interest in Lifetime, and they decided to get back together. Lifetime was my favorite band growing up, but even their last show, there was only 250 people there. And then their next show back, there was thousands. Maybe 1,500. I shouldn't say thousands. But, a dramatically bigger thing. So the one motivation, the way this ties in, is that I saw a lot of bands go, hey, we were way bigger than Lifetime. Let's get that money. People want to see us. If they could do it, we can do it. And then the other one is, this is a one I see, I produce a lot of legacy acts. And, royalty checks keep getting smaller for these bands as they get older. And they go, hey, look at that mortgage. I know what I can do to help pay that. Let's call up Coachella and see if they want us. And
all money now sizable money is in touring or merchandise.
Touring, and which are basically one and the same, because if you tour, you sell more merchandise, obviously. But
right.
Yes, you're not gonna. Your iTunes downloads will go up, and you'll sell more records and vinyl and everything too if you reunite. And it's a way to put a little gasoline on the spark of your dwindling royalty check. And those two reasons, you see it, but it's very funny to me. Like, there's a discussion with some of the writers your age, and everybody's talking now about Mineral, like they were like this thing and that they were this popular band. And it's like, dude, I went to Mineral shows. There was 40 people there. There was no one there. Brownies, which was a 150 cap venue, wasn't sold out that night they played when I saw them. It's a little ridiculous. And now people, now obviously now they're selling out shows because they've had 20 years of, or 15 years of kids spreading the word about them, Tumblring their lyrics and all that thing, and they're bigger than they ever were. But I don't know what Mineral or American Football's intentions are, but I sure know I'm excited to go out with all my friends who never come out anymore because they have kids and go see bands that we didn't even, I'm going to see Black Flag in 2 weeks with the Greg Ginn lineup. I think they're terrible.
That's just kind of a fun. That's kind of just
a
but
fun it's
night.
That thing. All my friends who have children or who are college professors or Pulitzer Prize winners with really crazy jobs can't get out very often. So I'm looking forward to seeing them, and I'm looking forward to running into people I don't even know that'll be there, and seeing somebody I haven't seen in 10, 20 years. So I'm always psyched for reunions. Let everybody reunite, especially Jawbreaker. Yeah. They got to reunite.
They're the last one. So I think I figured out where I wanted to go with this. So there's two different, and there's a few, let's just say absolutely the largest motivating factor is money. And the second is we want to tour with these people, our friends again, or make music again. And that's fine. But so with reunions then, there's two different kinds. There are the reunions, let's say American football, where they may play under 15 shows in this reunion, right? Or, they may reunite for a few shows once every few years. And they're not making new music. So that's the one kind. But then the other kind is where it's we're going to be a full force band again, right? And so the biggest two examples of that are Blink and Fall Out Boy of recent. And then the smaller examples would be Braid. Braid also, reunited a few years ago. They have a new album coming out in just a month or two on Top Shelf Records, right? So those are the two different kinds in my mind. There's the band like American Football where it's hey, it'd be awesome to play a few shows with these guys again, but I have other jobs or other music that I need to support instead. So let's not make new music. Let's just play some shows. But then so where I want to get with Blink is when is enough enough? Are you were the original plans of being in the span 20 years ago to do this the Rolling Stones until we're 70 whatever years old, or is there actually probably an end date regardless of whether you reunited or never broke up of when do we stop being a band? When do we slow down? When does it just not make sense to be in a band anymore, or to do it full time, or to give fans or ourselves the illusion that we need to be doing this full time. And so that's to me sort of like where the crux of the issue is with Blink right now. So they reunited. They took 2 years to put out an album that was very much delayed, but they went on 2 incredibly successful U.S. tours in amphitheaters. It was sold out. Like Blink 182 got a lot bigger somehow from the time when they went away to reunited because they have multi generations of fans, which is a very lucky thing. But so then they made an album. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. They toured a little more. Then they made an EP that more people liked than not liked compared to the album. And then since then, we've kind of been in this situation with them where last year was really great for a Blink 182 fan. I saw them 5 times. That's 5 more times than I ever thought I would see Blink 182 when I got into them because they broke up. And things seemed great. They did like Riot Fest on a large scale, and then they did like I saw them play to 500 people at Music Hall Williamsburg. They were doing all this really cool stuff. And then I flew to LA for 24 hours because, I have a Blink 182 tattoo. And I saw them play my favorite album in full. And that was incredible. And there was all this talk of like, we're going to hit the studio in 90 days. Like, we're going to have we promised to have music out this summer. We don't want to tour before we have music out. But of course, you have to book touring when you're a band like that, a year in advance practically. So they're headlining Reading and Leeds. But now they sort of broke these promises of, we're actually like, we can't have music out in time because Tom needs to finish the Angels and Airways record, or because Mark lives in Mark lives in the UK right now, or, all this like weird commitment. And it ends up pissing off fans, obviously, because it's a very confusing thing. This is our favorite band. We want, like, why are they doing this if they don't want to be doing this, right? And so in the sense of Blink, it's like these guys have like a ton of money. They're worth upwards of $100 million each. And it's a lot different from a situation from Braid, where like I think that's a little bit more out of passion because they're not going to sell 200,000 copies of the record first week like Blink 182 could, or like Fall Out Boy could, right? So, I mean, so for you so I'm just not ranting all day. Do you think it's like a legitimate conversation for any band, not even necessarily just Blink, where it's like, we're doing fine. Let's say we all get along, but like, do we really want to be doing this band until we're 70 years old? Whether people want us to be doing that or not, like, are we doing this 365 days like we were for the first 10 years or not?
I mean, so a lot of my new book is about the only way you make good music is if you're passionate about it. You have to make the music you want to hear. And if you make the music you think people want to hear, you make terrible music. Like, I think that's like the interesting thing of like, obviously a lot of people got pissed off when Self-Titled came out from Blink. And I actually use that as the example of the book because it really changed their sound, but they had to make the music they were passionate about. And a lot of people love Self-Titled too. Personally, that's the Blink.
By the way, let me just cut in here. Look, Jesse, it's called Untitled.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not enough of a nerd to know that one.
Okay. For the next edit in the book, I'm gonna need to be cited. I'll continue on.
I think that's their best record. I
do too.
But that's because they made the music they wanted. They loved The Cure, so they wanted to do songs that sounded like The Cure and the electronic music they were making. But I think that, I find those 2 post-reunion records unlistenable, and I think that's the thing is, so regardless of what I think a lot of this is about, can you make music that you still want to hear with these people? Because no one enjoys when you just make music to pander to your audience. That's when bands make bad records. Like, same thing, like, Radiohead's always a great example of how bad people got when they became like a semi-electronic band on Kid A compared to the guitar rock of OK Computer. And, the answer I always have for this is it's just like, should you make another record? Well, can you, in your place, make a record that you would want to hear with this group of people? Because that's the only way it's going to has a chance to be good. Not every record that's made that you make for yourself is a record that people love, but no one likes the record you make when you pander. You have to be getting your own emotional responses from music. And so my answer to this is okay, if you guys think you can still make something that you would love to hear, you would love to be in this world, keep going. But if you can't, don't make a record.
And that's a tough thing for me from this like specific example of Blink, where it's like I was saying last year, everything's kind of like everything seemed perfect. I was stoked as a Blink-182 fan. The fall was awesome. Like I was very excited that they did the 10-year shows for Untitled, because I was like, they're gonna go into the studio within 90 days of playing these songs that are their best songs, and they just celebrated it, and everyone was so excited. Like I was like, boy, they're gonna be in a headspace where music like this makes sense to them, and that's what we're gonna get. But now it's like half a year later, and it's just a question of like they're publicly feuding of like with each other about, in the most passive aggressive way of like, well, we can't really record because this dude's busy with this and that dude's busy with that. And it's like, well, maybe you guys should just like play Reading and Leeds every other year, do like a US tour every 3 years, and like make it known to fans that we should not be expecting a new album from Blink-182 every year and a half. Or, this applies to anything. Like if Fall Out Boy just wants to play shows now because they made the record and they toured their asses off for a year, then just play shows every other year. Like don't overdo yourself, but like, there's going to be desire from 20,000 people in Long Island to go see Blink-182 every 3 years.
Yes.
At Jones Beach, right? That's great. It's clearly a money grab, but if they're not like punching each other on the stage and they're enjoying themselves, and the 20,000 people that go to every show on that tour are enjoying themselves, like I also don't have a problem with that. But to me, the problem is, and I think with any band, but obviously it's more passionate to me because it's Blink, is just like, don't give me the wrong impression of what you're doing. Like, beyond, like, we're not dumb kid. It's not like a One Direction thing where their prime fan base is, young kids. And that, that's not necessarily to make fun of like One Direction fans, but just, the primary fan base of most of the music we're listening to is from 16 to people older than that, right? It's like, we are like, don't lie to us. Like we are adults as well. Like just be transparent with what you want. If you really just want to play your music and make your money, like, all right.
You say this, but you know what? If bands were really transparent about what went on, like if we get into this, Google Glass world of seeing how people really live their lives, no one's going to like their music anymore. Yeah, as somebody who works behind the scenes for the last, 17, 18 years of sitting with bands while they go through their creative struggles, no one wants to see that. Don't be transparent. Just, if anything, shut up in the public forum.
But what if you have the two options of this band's going to make music that sucks because they just clearly don't want to, they're not excited about making music with each other, and then that drives down the excitement of fans to go see them, versus, hey guys, we're actually not going to make new music anymore. We're just going to play shows every once in a while because that's our best version of having fun in Blink-182. Like that's what I mean by transparent. Like isn't that the better outcome than we're going to half-ass this? Don't be mad at us because we still want to play shows.
Yeah, it's very clear. I think anybody who follows this band, and I barely follow it. In fact, the most I follow is how much you tweet about it. You are.
I'm great at that.
Is that, these guys are not passionate about this band. They're passionate about their other projects, and that's really the thing is, so to me, when it comes to that, I think they should hang it up and just play tour and play shows. Get those checks, keep paying the mortgage. Yeah.
Keep getting them checks.
As long as they enjoy and put on a good show, who cares if it's just for the money? Because I just want that emotion of feeling those songs and feeling the crowd sing along to it. And while I'm never going to go to a Blink show, there's plenty of bands who I want to do that with. A perfect example, I want Lifetime to play again. It's been a few years since I've seen them. I saw them probably about 5 times the first year they reunited too. I'd take road trips. I'd borrow my parents' car to go do it, since I'm a New Yorker who doesn't have a car. And, it was a great time, and I'd love for Lifetime to start touring again, but I don't know that their passion's there for it, but as long as they have passion on that stage, I'm psyched.
Yeah, as long as they can get up on stage and like I'm leaving that show and it's like, wow, I would like there's nothing else like there's little else I could have been doing in that period of time that would have been anywhere near this or better, right? It's like that's great. Like I am excited to go to these shows. I don't care what you're reuniting for. Like as long as you are putting on something that's representative of the music I love to come and see your show, like please do that. But if not, you should probably stay or go on hiatus again, which is unfortunately I
Yep.
think my desire with Blink. What a sad world. I never
You
thought I'd
okay?
say
Do you
that.
need a tissue? We get a
I'm
little emo
okay,
here.
like I mean, yeah, for all the nice listeners of podcasts, like I might have teared up in 2009 when I was
Wow.
15 when they reunited. Like, look, man, I loved this band. Uh, I was,
I would jump for
boy,
joy if
very sad.
Jawbreaker reunited. Truth be told, yeah, that
That would be
band.
awesome. Yeah, exactly. Though it's like there's so much pent up
Yeah,
wishing, right? Then it's like you get your. That's something that's so cool about music that I can't really think of anything else unless it's like there's going to be a new Star Wars movie and maybe it won't suck, right? Like it's something where you have this undescribable emotional attachment to that's so unique. Like,
yeah.
it's like love. It's you can't really describe it, but it's something that you wish for and you wish for. There's a chance it may never come and then you get it and it's like it's actually as good as the wish
Yeah.
sometimes, or better. And that's the coolest thing about music. to
I
me.
100% agree.
I think.
I have that with movies and books too, but yeah,
Yeah, art in
Like
general, I suppose.
like
It's
I
just like
saw Alejandro Jodorowsky was probably the greatest art movie director of all time. He made these movies, El Topo and Holy Mountain, in the '70s that were the beginnings of making an art movie. Like they were the craziest movies ever made in the history of movies. Still to this day, like no, he just made another movie at 82 years old that came out on Friday, and it was probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I fucking bawled crying. It was so fucking amazing. At the end of it on Friday night, like I just lost my shit because it was.
man, this blink hiatus is really taking effect on
Well,
me
also,
too.
this is the funny thing of like, God, this guy's making like one of the, probably like I would literally call this movie one of the 200 best, maybe even 100 best movies ever made in the history of movies that I saw on Friday night, and he made it at 82. Can you imagine still being able to make good art? Like, who makes good art at 82?
Exactly that.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's
you
like
know
exactly
what we
we're
don't want to
talking about.
hear?
It's like
The Blink-182 record made at 82. Because if they're still singing about dogs farting
the,
at 82 and, mom and dad fucking, that's going to be some sad shit in the nursing home.
that would be some sad shit. They're gonna have great nursing homes though. Spencer's nursing home. Well, that's
Well,
what about
obviously, I just
recommendations? You
gave
have-
the
you have
most
anything?
wholehearted recommendation to
Yeah.
The Dance of Reality. I think it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. So I have that, and I've just been, well, it's funny. I actually don't really like the mastering job on the remaster of the American football record, but I've just been re-listening to the old version over and over and over again in honor of its reissue, and that's just one of the best emo records ever made. I mean, that record's just amazing.
Well, there's an emo record right there.
Yeah, I
Very
loved
emo record.
his tweet this week when he said something like, "Oh my God, I just read the lyrics to my songs. I must be depressed." that was one of the
That was great.
that was one of the best Twitter
wow.
moments in the history of Twitter.
I would recommend Charmer by Tiger's Jaw. Some mean citizen leaked it early, but the record is phenomenal. I had a lot of concerns going into it just because all of the miscommunication and thoughts about members leaving and what the recording process would be like and all of that. But I think it's my favorite Tiger's Jaw record. There are some songs on it that are very, very sad and very, very good. So I recommend you being sad to that this summer. And then I would recommend 100 Words or Less podcast. Our friend Ray Harkins does it. He's had a bunch of great guests lately. I think it's probably relevant for a lot of people listening to this. So check out some of those episodes where he has someone from Tiger's Jaw or Pretty Sex or Story So Far, etc. on.
I listened to a great episode of a podcast this week that I think our listeners would love. Shepard Fairey, the guy who's responsible for Andreas Apostle or the Obama Hope logo, was on Mark Maron's WTF podcast this week, and he really discussed a lot about, I think, like our listeners would like, because it was like a lot of how punk affects good marketing and good art, and like how growing up punk gets you into a mindset to make good art and do good marketing. And it was just that hour plus of conversation just flew by while I was walking the other day, and it was like one of the best podcast episodes I've ever heard in my life.
Thank you to everyone listening this week. You can check us out at offtherecord.fm. I'm on Twitter at @ZZarillo, and Jesse is at Jesse Cannon. And thank you to our two sponsors, Limited Run and Card Included. We'll see you next week.